I'm Christina from That Canadian Teacher, and I'm a high school history teacher from southeastern Ontario. And I'm here to talk to you today about how I have my students create escape games in our Canadian history class. Now, you certainly can do this and apply it to any history curriculum, but I'm going to be speaking specifically about how I use it in my Canadian history classroom. So what's an escape game? An escape game can come in a variety of different formats. Popularly, it's a game where people work together to try and escape a room or try to unlock a box. For the purposes of the project that I do in my class, I have students escape from a box. So what I do is I provide every student group, and each group has about 4 to 5 students in it, with one box that they then have to try and create an escape game around that. So the end goal for their particular game should be to unlock that escape box. So what sort of supplies do you need to have in advance of starting the escape game? So there are 3 important things to have. The first is an escape box. This can come in different formats. I just purchased this box from Dollarama here in Canada. It's $4 each box, and it's just a jewelry box. And so you can see that it's just got this little kind of hook to it. You also want to have a lock that is reprogrammable. So this is really important. You want to make sure you get a lock that you can actually change the combination to, and that way you can reuse the lock as many times as necessary. You could purchase one that isn't reprogrammable, but then the groups would be stuck with that combination and having to work towards that combination. I got this lock from Walmart. However, you can get it from Amazon, but you just don't have the color selection. So it's about $5.99 or so from Walmart. And this one is a 3-digit, so 3-number reprogrammable lock. You can get ones that are a little bit more expensive that allow you to put in letters, so either 4 letters or 3 letters. You can have even more complex number letter reprogrammable locks. This was just the easiest, and it tends to be a little bit fail-safe, because even if you do get locked out, and it's happened a couple of times, you can always have your trusty math friends try to crack the lock in whatever combination was mistakenly put into it. So I like this one because it's inexpensive and it's easily reprogrammable. The third thing are these little eye hooks. Now, if your lock has some sort of an eye hook if your box has some sort of an eye hook to it, you don't need to get this. But because the box that I had purchased from the dollar store didn't have a lock function to it, you can actually see that it doesn't, I needed to create a lock function. So I purchased these little eye hooks from Home Depot. They're about 12 for, I think it was like $2.50 or $2.99. So you get a pretty good deal for them. And all you need to do is you would just drill a hole into the box. This is a wood box. It's very easily drilled into. And then you just screw in this eye hook. You might want to put in some plasticine or something to prevent the students from getting injured by it. This allows the students to be able to put the lock onto the box, okay? You do want to make sure that whatever eye hook that you choose, that it does fit whatever lock you're using, because they do come in different sizes. I don't remember the eye hook size that I got, but I did bring in one of my locks in with me into Home Depot, and I had the Home Depot associate help me pick the appropriately sized box to fit. In a history class, I know that it's very important for students to be doing research, to make sure that they understand the topic that they're researching. So in my class, I do have the students do some investigation into a particular decade. So I break each group up into the decades in modern Canadian history. My curriculum goes from 1914 to the present, and so I choose to focus on 1950s forward. So there will be one group that's looking at the 1950s, one group that's looking at the 60s, one on the 70s and onward. And that group has to do research, and I do evaluate their research skills to make sure that they're on the right track. So for example, they're expected to hit the theme of Indigenous rights, the theme of equality, the theme of Canada-US relations. So I'm just looking for that in their pre-work. That then gives them the information and the historical knowledge and historical wherewithal to be able to continue forward in creating their escape game. So the students will then come together as a collaborative group of people who looked at the 1950s and will create a game around the 1950s. What I do is I provide them with a organizational handout. What this organizational handout does is it provides the students with some guidance as to role responsibilities. So there are three main roles that I have the groups assign to themselves. So they have to allocate the jobs. The first is the group manager. The group manager's responsibility is to just make sure that everyone's on track. Now, to make sure that there's not someone taking advantage of that and not really helping out the other team members, I make sure that the group manager has to provide photographs of their accomplishments throughout the process, and they have to create a slideshow using Google Slides to document all of the work that they've done throughout the process. The students in that group then can use the Google slideshow in a portfolio or to demonstrate their interaction and group work together. The second role that I have is the role of the clue creator. The clue creator can be a job that's assigned to one person or two people, or even more if you have bigger groups. The clue creator's responsibility, of course, is to create the clues. So this is the person who is in charge of figuring out what are they going to be doing throughout the course of the game. So is it going to be codexes? Are they going to be multiple choice? Are they going to be some sort of a puzzle that they want the people to put together? So it's their responsibility to kind of figure out the sequencing of the various tasks that the person playing the game will have to accomplish. I tell them to start with having 4 tasks, but this can certainly go into more tasks depending on the time that you want the game to take place. So I tell them to aim for about 30 minutes that the game should be played within. So that's about 4 to 6 clues on average that the students would be creating. And so their responsibility, of course, is creating the sequencing and the historically accurate clues to go along with their game. The third job is the tech advisor. So the tech advisor can be as complicated or as simple as you'd like it to be. For my class, I have the tech advisor do 2 very specific things. The first is that they are responsible for creating a 3D imaging. And are responsible for printing that 3D image. And so they will create something that is reflective of their decade. So I've had students create the Nobel Peace Prize that Lester Pearson received. I've had students create a map of Canada where Quebec is broken off to indicate the separation referendums. I've had students create Olympic medals. So really the limitation is just in their imagination. So they will consult with their clue creators and their group manager to figure out exactly what item they should be creating in their 3D imaging program. My students use Tinkercad. And then they will print it using our 3D printer. And so they can incorporate it as part of the final box, that's what's being unlocked. Or they can, so for example, the group that had the Nobel Prize for Lester Pearson's lost his Nobel Prize, so you need to find it. And so the end result is you have to unlock the box to get the Nobel Prize. Some students make it as part of the clue process. So as the player is going through the game, they will find the actual 3D print somewhere or use that 3D print as part of a clue solve. The second thing that I have them do is they have to code a microbit. My department received 10 microbits from Let's Talk Science that were generously donated by the Government of Canada. And so we use these microbits to code particular clues. So the students would use the microbit program to try and create a way for the player to engage with the microbit. And so the again, like the 3D print, the limitation is really in their limitation of their imagination. So I've had students who create a theme song. I've had students who've put in some sort of a questionnaire. I've had students do a little game as part of their microbit. So really it's as complicated as the students want to make it. So in these early stages, the students will be deciding who gets what job and will be allocating those jobs. Then I instruct the students to decide what their end game is going to be, their end goal. So for example, Lester B. Pearson has lost his Nobel Prize. So that's your end goal. You want to open the box to get the Nobel Prize. So you need to figure out what is that last piece of the puzzle. From there, your clue creators can then work to incorporate various aspects. So I've had students who have decided to focus in on a theme like science and technology or Canada's relationship with the United States. It really just depends on the decade and the focus that they want to take within that decade. And so you just leave this in the hands of the students and they will run with that particular task and that particular idea. Throughout the process, you want the students to be incorporating historical thinking skills. In a history class, historical thinking skills are very important skills for them to establish. So I make sure that the clue creators and the tech advisors are really working towards trying to incorporate those historical thinking skills. The students are responsible for ensuring that somewhere along the line they're incorporating as many historical thinking skills as they deem fit into their game and their game process. As we lead up into the final accomplishment, as the students are finishing up their games, it's ideal that you would have them do a practice run. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll put out an email to the staff and ask if there's any classes that would like to volunteer to test our game. Usually I'll get a reply and that class will come up during my classes period and we'll execute the game. The students will run their games as they would have hoped. Then that trial group will provide critical feedback to allow them to go back and improve upon the mistakes that have happened. So mistakes like the lock didn't open according to the clues that they had established, or the video didn't have the right messaging. So this allows them an opportunity to repair any problems that may have occurred in that initial trial process. The final part is their final production. So what I do is I have the students rotate. So they are not allowed to be a part of their own game. They have to rotate and play someone else's game. So when they play someone else's game, they are going to be trying to look for critical feedback to provide. And hopefully they'll be able to unlock that box as the end result. If they're unable to unlock the box or there are hiccups along the way, they would provide feedback to that group. That group then takes that feedback and can reflect upon it in a reflection piece that they will then submit to me for evaluation. Now, I want to make it very clear. This whole collaborative process, I am not evaluating. So the clue creators, the tech advisors, the group manager, slideshow, none of it I am evaluating, strictly because I don't believe in group evaluations, so providing one mark for an entire group. Additionally, it's very difficult to see all of the work that one person might put in. And if one person does fall short of the group's expectations, how will I be able to know that? So what I do instead is I have them reflect upon the process. So they have to submit to me a reflection that they incorporate historical thinking skills, so how they went about including historical thinking skills in their particular job and their responsibility. And in the execution of the game. I then evaluate that reflection piece, and the escape game process as a whole is complete. And the students feel a sense of accomplishment and pride in their contribution and how well that contribution worked. So for me, I like to incorporate the escape game into my history class. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to leave a comment below about how you might incorporate an escape game into your classroom. There are many different ways that you could incorporate an escape game. You could do a teacher-driven one. There are websites like Breakout EDU that do provide you with a ready-made escape game. But I find that the students really do enjoy taking on the responsibility to develop and create their own escape game. If you have any particular questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get to answer those questions. I'll also leave my social media handles somewhere over here, so feel free to give me a follow. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.